It's a room with a comfy couch. There's a washroom, stocked mini bar, a coffee table, and on the coffee table is a note saying, "Definitely no traps or monsters here. Just rest.
Just rest. It's okay."
Oh no. Oh no.
You sound terrible.
Yeah, I think I've got the COVID-19. Otherwise called the COV or the vid.
I don't.
This ain't great because we're stuck together probably for the next hour or so in the same tight little room. So you might catch it.
Well, why? What is it? I don't. We don't.
What do you mean you don't?
We don't have it. I don't know.
You don't know what the vid is?
No, I don't know what the vid is.
It's just for the past like couple of years we've been dealing with it. It's a global pandemic. It's like the flu but worse.
Like
you could die. Yeah, well, like zombies. Like, but
yeah,
of course we don't have those.
No. But maybe we just deal in different types of shots.
But you have zombies?
Yeah.
Well then, I'll keep my COVID.
Oh.
You can keep your zombies.
That's cool. I'm all stocked up, so it's great.
Wow, that's rough.
Yeah.
I guess you can read the notes today then.
No, okay, perfect. Yeah. I'll, as usual, read exactly out loud. All right, welcome to Caffeine and Cantrip. I'm gonna read aloud exactly what's written or be destroyed or replaced. That's normal. Yeah.
Yeah, as always.
Welcome to Caffeine and Cantrips, the show where we talk about D&D or else. Hello.
Oh, gee, I'm Sean, number 43.
Oh, and I'm Byron, number 40. And this week, these two dankish hedge-born fowls will be talking about the difference between gaming styles and Battle of Theme Titans, Sandbox versus Railroad versus Waterslide. Whoop whoop. So I guess buckle in. We're going for a ride.
Well, all right. Let's go.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us again for another episode of, I guess, Caffeine and Catch-Ups. Today, we're talking about sandboxes versus railroads versus the Waterslide.
Yes.
3 ways of handling sort of story and sort of narrative within your campaign, right? D&D.
Right. Yeah. 3 different ways, 3 different, I suppose, methods on how to handle how you're dealing with that.
Okay. Well, let's go through them in order. I think most people know what like a railroad versus sandbox is.
Sure.
Let's start off with those 2, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know, what do you think as how do you define a railroad?
Well, I thought, that I was actually just about to say that. So good. No, I think that we should start from kind of a definition. So the one that we've looked at and kind of pulled together is essentially that a railroad or railroading is forcing characters into a pre-written story.
Okay.
Right? And the story is essentially exclusively created by the dungeon master or the game master, whichever system you're playing. And generally, you could say it has a negative connotation to it. It's generally frowned upon because when you control the story as a DM,
right,
depending on how close to 100% you're going with this, right, essentially you've just become a writer. And you're just saying what happens,
right,
and then you're limiting the ability to react, or you're limiting the PC's kind of ability to choose and how the range of choices that they have.
Or like they can choose, but their effect on the storyline.
It's very close to that thing. Yeah. So I mean, essentially that's kind of what we're looking at as far as railroading. I mean, obviously an example of this, is when you give, somebody plot armor, right? No, it doesn't matter how hard you hit the bad guy. He does escape, and he escapes with the MacGuffin, and he escapes with the princess, and she's in another castle. Right? No matter what you do, these are the things that happen. And we see this a lot in video games, right? And unfortunately, we can see it a lot in our D&D and our TTRPG games as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's a pretty good definition of railroading. And I don't know. I really think that railroading gets a bad rap. I think there is a time and place where railroading or that railroad style of DMing is really useful, actually.
Absolutely.
Specifically, I think if you're a beginner DM
Mm-hmm.
or if your players are predominantly new as well,
Mm-hmm.
a railroad style narrative or campaign, it really does, because it's hard enough as a new DM to keep track of everything. Right? You have to keep track of because you're new, you're keeping track of all the rules, all the different roles of dice, what dice to use, when do you use it. You have to keep track of NPCs. If you're doing voices, all the voices, what's
Yep.
happening. If the maybe not even familiar with how to RP, really,
Mhm.
and you're going on with that.
Yeah. Let alone all the stuff like initiative, hit points.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and
You're in
you're
combat.
telling me I need to come up with like a dynamic, meaningful storyline on the fly, and making sure that people sort of are having a good time, giving them agency, but not too much. Like it's a lot.
It is.
So if you just made it simple and just did, hey, this is the storyline. There's not going to be any other places you can go, like you might want to, but like there's nothing there. And I as a new DM, in the aim of sort of learning how to do this whole DMing of D&D, we're just going to go along this predetermined story path, right? And that could be an adventure, could be several adventures.
So here's an example. Tell me if this is good or bad. So I, as the DM, look at you and say, you must like and subscribe to this video because I'm going to railroad the hell because we're a new podcast and we need to get out there and get it going. No, I apologize. Railroading's bad, but hitting the like button, we would like that. Please like, subscribe, share some comments.
Like new DMers, new podcasters, new YouTubers.
Yep.
Railroading, you got to do it.
Sometimes you just gotta force it to happen. So we're gonna just input that on you. But yes, to keep going, absolutely. That's what it's doing. Is it's forcing you to move in a certain way, right? And sometimes it's easier to know what the outcome is before you actually get to it as the DM, right? But ultimately, that ruins the effect of what's happening, because then what does it matter if this is what's just going to happen anyway? It doesn't matter if we defuse the bomb and it still explodes. Well, then why try to defuse the bomb? It really takes all of the weight of choice of action out of it, and the benefit.
Like, well, I would disagree. It's really simplified, but there's still a choice. There's two outcomes: you either pass or you fail. If you fail, you lose, or the MacGuffin gets stolen, or the person dies, or whatever, and that's it. All right, you just don't have choice in where to go or what to do. This is the puzzle in front of you. You have to do it. You pass or you fail, and that's it.
Okay.
Right. So there is, I think, still some enjoyment in that. Or talking about maybe like you still need to figure out how to complete a puzzle. You still get to role play with your friends and other characters, and that's still fun. Would it be more fun to be like, oh, we don't want to figure out how to open the door to the wooden house, we just want to burn the house down? Of course, that's way more fun to be able to do that.
Right.
But it's not without fun, right? The things that you put in front of the players, I think. Or like, you have to fight these bandits because they have the key. You have to. That's not unfun. Combat is fun in D&D, right?
Yeah, definitely can be fun.
So while I wouldn't say it takes away all the meaning. It does take away a lot, but it's...
Well, there is also the idea of not knowing, right? As long as you're a player and you have that mystery, we didn't know what was going to happen or whatnot. But if you kind of, peek behind the screen, as it were, to see what's going on behind, it could show that it really deflates everything that you've been doing. If you find out that, oh, that person could escape no matter what, or this person was going to die no matter what, right? Or they were going to get away no matter what. I think thematically, when you know that these things are happening, it kind of, I do think it deflates. It ruins some of the fun, not all of the fun for sure.
Yeah,
but some of the aspects of what's going on, because then ultimately the story is going to proceed in a certain way that you just really can't fully interact or fully immerse with it.
Yes, to a point. I mean, I would argue, like, say something like any of the Final Fantasy video games. any RPG game, you can only complete it in sort of one way. There's a main storyline, and you either kill the bosses
Mm-hmm.
or not. You complete the castle or not,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they're still fun. They're still a lot of fun. A lot of people love those sort of really narrative-driven, single storyline, single direction experiences.
Well, and we
Right.
can see now that there's a natural evolution in video games that they have multiple endings depending on
Mhm.
what you do.
Yep.
So you're not forced necessarily into an ending. You do have a spectrum of choice that opens it up.
Right.
Now, I suppose you're ultimately correct that you're going to be following the same path. You can't just turn left at the beginning and go fight the big bad guy.
Right.
Or maybe you can, depending on the game, you know. But in this case, no, I think there's going all the way down to it. You know, when they specifically coin the term like rail shooter and stuff like
Right,
that, where
right.
you are on a dedicated path,
Mhm.
like a roller coaster. You're
Yeah.
on a dedicated path.
Yeah.
Here's your loop-de-loops. Here's your big drop. Here's
Yeah.
your really exciting part. But now we're back at the station, right?
Yeah.
Like if you ride that roller coaster time and time again, it's not going to change.
Right.
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 That
Yep.
story is going to be
Yep.
that same story. And I think you're right. You can still have fun. You can still
Yeah.
make fun in there, right? And you can still have a lot of interaction between the PCs. But as far as the story goes,
Yeah.
it's completely out of your hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you can enjoy it. You just don't have the fun in creating the story,
Right.
right? Like sort
Right.
of being a part of that. Yeah, in sort of the where the story leads, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is a significant amount of fun. Don't get me wrong. And I think that's why it's frowned upon in D&D, because whereas in an old school video game, kind of, or like a movie or a book, you have to. That's the only choice you get. You have
Yes.
to follow that one
Yes.
story, right? In D&D, if you could, it could be so much more when you limit the choices for everyone and just go with that
Mhm.
single storyline, the railroad. I think people are like, oh, why would you do that? Like, why would you eat nachos without salsa?
Right. Well, because cheese and chili is enough for me, my guy. My guy, cheese and chili
My
is
guy.
enough.
My guy,
But no,
cheese.
like turning this on its head,
Mhm.
however, right? And you know, putting that frown upside down, right? This can actually be good in certain circumstances. So, you know, whether you're a new DM or you're a veteran DM, ultimately the DM position at the table is kind of a leadership role for the group,
Mhm.
right? And so because of that, I feel that there is a necessity sometime to rein the PCs in. You got a lot of ideas, but I'm going to force you to pick an idea to explore right now. Let's stop the analysis paralysis. Let's do instead of talking about doing.
That analysis paralysis.
Oh,
that never happens.
No, and I mean maybe you wouldn't consider that
Right.
railroading in a sense,
Mhm.
but no, I'm forcing an issue to move forward here. We're going to go in a direction. The amount of railroading is what is turning into the variance. Is I'm going to force you guys to make a decision. I'm not
Mhm.
going to make the decision for you, but a decision is being made now,
Right.
and in the now we are moving forward. You want to keep talking about it? Great, but I want to move forward with this.
Yeah.
So we don't spend necessarily the whole session arguing about what we're going to do
Right.
next instead of doing it.
Right.
Right?
I mean, that is a good point. Even I think all the terms that we talk about, like railroad, sandbox, water slide, it's not like 100% railroad, 100% sandbox,
No,
right? It's got varying sort of amounts of each, right?
Yeah, and I think that's where the control and how heavy-handed you are with this
Mhm.
turns these things into negative stereotypes.
Right.
Right?
Right.
A little bit of something is good. A
Mhm.
lot of something can be bad.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
So when we're talking about this, sometimes you need the PCs to go through the spooky horror house.
Right.
Right? And
Right.
in the spooky horror house, they can't go right and they can't go left. They have to go forward. And why do they have to go forward? Because it's scary. And every step forward adds a little bit to the tension. But you're
Mhm.
limiting, you're choosing to obey the theme of maybe making the PCs feel helpless
Mhm.
by actually in the game removing decisions from them and narrowing that down so that they feel like they're lacking the ability to make decisions.
Right.
Right? And that translates through. So the
Mm.
theme is assisted by railroading.
Right.
Right.
No, and that's true, right? Like even in like the most advanced kind of a DMing the choice to make some portions of the campaign railroading can be very poignant.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, I'm not going to say it because it's in the middle of your campaign.
Go ahead. It's in the past now. Unless it's spoilers.
No. It's spoilers.
Oh, it's spoilers. Okay. Yes. No spoilers.
Right. But all of a sudden, you go to sleep, and then the next day, everyone's a zombie in the town.
Yes.
Right. Like, oh, what happened? Like, I didn't choose that. No, that's this. Just by the very fact that it's a DM, you force that situation onto the players. Can be said to be railroady, right? But you need to, or why would you even need a DM?
And it has to go kind of a step farther, right? You didn't just say, "Here's a story hook," right? Everyone's a zombie in town except for you, and you have to figure out why. Yeah. Right? Not everyone's a zombie, and then you can just leave because you were planning to leave anyway. Right? That doesn't diminish anything. The railroad is forcing people into that funnel.
Yeah.
And really saying this is the only way to go.
Yeah.
This is the only chance.
That's definitely another level of it. Yeah.
That's the higher level of it. Absolutely. Because I don't think hooks are bad, right? Hooks are definitely not bad.
Yeah.
But no, I think when we're talking about it in this light, that there are degrees or there's percentages towards the absolute of something, that we do need to play with it a little bit. And we do need to, like, great example in our last campaign, but spoiler free because it's episode 1 or 2 of it, was, I chose not to make the PCs meet each other in a tavern. I chose to bring them together through a selection process. So they ultimately were all strangers. They ultimately were just answering a call to action.
Yeah.
But the flip side of it was I chose to make it as decorated, or I chose to put it in my own theme, in my own voice, to adapt it to the campaign as it was, so that there would be that kind of acceptability of the railroad right now. And what followed was our combat introduction.
Yeah.
Right. With our new player who hadn't played with some of the rules and the homebrew that we were using. Yeah, absolutely. We're going to have a combat where you get to practice. It's going to be a safe, padded room, nerfed down
safe spaces
environment. Yeah, it's a safe space for you to understand and explore what these rules are, so you can develop familiarity with them.
Yeah.
So that later you can practice those when the swords are sharpened. Right. And I think that was a necessary process. Call it a tutorial, call it, the easy mode, the learning area, whatever you want to call it. I think that when we use these ideas of the railroad to exemplify what's going to happen later, people call it the Mario leveling process or whatnot, where we expose you to a jump.
Yeah.
Right. You have to jump over a block. It's just a block, but next you have to jump over a gap. Right.
Yeah.
It's the same space. It's the same size. It's the same everything. But now if you fall, you lose a life. Before you got to practice jumping over the block, there was no harm, no foul. Right. And so now we make the gap wider. Now we make it, like, we add and add and add.
Right.
But it all boils back to these rules that we set up earlier on that you adapted to. So you know how the game is played and you know what's going on.
Right.
I think it's a great way to do kind of lessons in that
sense.
Like
tutorials.
Yeah. Without necessarily calling them that, but just, hey, I want to make sure that everybody has the basic tools to succeed. So that's what we're going to do. I, as the DM, am forcing you to do this for your own good. And then I'll take the reins up. Then once you know what's going on, then I can back off. I
mean, it's great even just to say, I want you guys to, I want to introduce the world to you. Like, this is the kind of world that this is the stuff that happens in this world, right? Because it's one thing to kind of read sort of like an intro to the campaign with like sort of the minimum that you kind of need to build the character. It's another to be like, oh, like a significant NPC just died in the first session, like in the most gruesome manner. And you're like, oh, okay, to this kind of world, I get it now. Right. Right. And it's useful as a tool. Right.
Yeah, and that's a great example of show don't tell. Right? I can tell you that the world is scary and dark and painful and all of these things. Or I can show you that your friend who just gave you a water canteen, like his last water canteen, and you're stuck in a desert, he gets brutally murdered by a sandworm. And you're like, oh, yes, bad things can happen to good people. Oh, okay. Yeah. I understand now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
And that's really good, because when we talk about introducing to the world, well, I think that brings us right to sandboxes.
Yes, sandboxes. I guess, what is a sandbox? Sandbox is basically it's the type of gameplay or type of sort of campaign where the DM builds the world, right? Builds the locations in the sort of areas and the structures and maybe even the culture that populates the world, all the creatures and all the people. But there is no set storyline, right?
Well, and I just want to say before we go on, like throwback to our earlier episodes, the scope of your campaign could set it. So your world building, your sandbox could be one city. Right? It could be one village. It could be one whatever. Don't think that a sandbox only consists of a big wide world.
Correct.
Right? The sandbox is whatever the scope of your campaign is.
Right.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about like a total, people like, oh, it's a sandbox campaign. If the whole campaign's a sandbox, it becomes, like I said, anything goes. Like anything the players want to go, they can go do. The DM will not sort of push them in any direction. And there's no per se any storyline, a continued sort of campaign storyline necessarily.
Which is one of the biggest differences between railroading and sandbox.
I mean, the great thing is the players can do anything they want to do with anything.
Yes.
Right. The problem is, like we talked about in the last episode, the more freedom you give to players, the more difficult it is to insert meaningful narrative within there. When I think of a pure sandbox game, think of something like Minecraft.
It's the perfect example.
Like these are the things you can do, and with them you can do anything you want. We're not gonna give any extra meaning or take away any extra meaning to whatever you do. You can die, you can build, you can dig, whatever. But there's no story. I mean, there's kind of progression, but there's no story to it. Like, oh yeah, I go and I kill the Ender Dragon, and that's it, right? And it's up to the players to figure out what they want to do, and why they want to do it, and then put and why anything is worth doing. So if the players then want to make their own narrative, they can, right? But the campaign and the world itself doesn't have any inherent meaning,
right,
to it.
Well, it is a perfect reflection of you, the player, you, the interacting party, right? If you like raising cows and chickens, and that's the most fun game that you can have, you can do that, right? If you like spelunking in tunnels and digging and going in that kind of a direction, you can do that. And it's fun then because you can do whatever you personally are attached to or you personally are motivated to do.
Yeah.
Right? But as far as goals, like you said, there are no. There's kind of one vague one that you don't have to accomplish.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I would say I just hit the microphone for all you listeners out there. Whereas, railroad type campaign, if you take it to the limit,
let's go to the extreme.
The onus is completely on the DM to do everything, put any sort of meaning in anything, right?
Interesting.
I think. And whereas in a sandbox, the onus is completely on the players for meaning and narrative. And,
yes. So a railroad, not a sandbox.
Yeah. The railroad.
Yeah.
100% 100% DM.
Yes.
Sandbox at its limit, 100% on the player. At its limit, you don't need a DM.
No, it's really a system. If you really want to play it, it's a system that requires no assistance.
Yeah. Whereas it's funny, the railroad, you don't need players.
You don't necessarily on the extreme end.
On the most extreme end,
you don't. You don't.
Yeah.
No, you don't. Which kind of ties into something that we were talking about before. Is one of the great things about a railroad is that it can limit some of your kind of questions or actions and where you want to go. Whereas the sandbox can overwhelm a lot of new players.
Yep.
What do you want to do?
A lot of new DMs too.
Yeah. What can I do? Asks the new player. You say anything, and they go white as a ghost. Right?
Yeah.
They're just like, I don't know what do you mean I can do anything? There has to be a rule or a guidepost or a whatever, and there isn't in the most extreme versions of this.
Yeah.
You can go do whatever you want, and that's too much for a lot of people. At least at the beginning.
I agree.
When you're getting into it, it's too much.
I agree totally. I mean, again, in past episodes, I talked about the joy of DMing your own character as a mini DM. If you do it that way, Sandbox can work really well. I think. because again, you've taken the onus upon yourself to use your character to inject meaning into the world. But like you said, new players I think will have a difficult time, or it's challenging for them, I'd say, to I don't know how to put it, to take that responsibility, because that's typically the DM, right? And again, I don't even know how to play D&D, like with all my spells and my rolls, my attacks and different actions, right?
Now, if we take the opposite side of that, right? I know what I can do. I know all my spells. I know all my attacks. I know all of the options that my character, classes, and abilities and all of that gives to me. But I don't know what to do. I don't know what my goal is. I don't know, like, give me a pointer, give me a direction, give me something. I'm lost, and everything I feel like I'm doing is a waste of time.
I feel like you have to be really good at role playing.
Yes.
To be able to handle an open world.
Now, same thing in the railroad, as in the sandbox, you can RP to your heart's content.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's if you want to stay in town and just chat, you absolutely can. And in this way, there's really far less onus on the DM to push you along.
Yeah.
Hey, if this is what you guys are having fun doing, go for it. I'm gonna go for a smoke break.
Yeah.
I'll be back. Let me know when you want the saloon fight to start, right? Like, hey,
yeah. Good, because the saloon fight's gonna start.
It's gonna start, but you guys tell me, right?
Yeah.
I got some dynamite sticks out there, but ultimately, why not RP? But as far as what we're talking about in the railroad versus sandbox, the story and the theme and whatnot become way blown out of proportion and so vague and distant. Right, from the DM and the game perspective, game creation perspective, that you can or you might not have one.
Well, it makes it even more difficult to keep a party together as well.
Yes,
because you're like, well, nothing's keeping us together. Then...
Is it the Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, the Ark of the Covenant one, Raiders of the Lost Ark, where it's like, oh yeah, if Indiana Jones wasn't there, right, like the story would have existed by itself. That's kind of the sandbox. You could be the PC that's running around in it, or you could not, right? And the world's just gonna keep on rolling without you.
Is that really what it is? I need to watch that movie again.
Yeah, apparently. Get in the comments if I'm wrong. If it's not Raiders of the Lost Ark, that's the one where Indiana Jones is kind of extraneous to the story.
Well, it's like Garfield without Garfield.
Garfield without Garfield is very different.
Yeah, it is very different.
John is a poor, sad little man. But we wish him well. We wish him well.
Oh, John.
Oh, John.
But I think, as much as we're sort of denigrating open sandboxes and saying how it's like it's so difficult, it's horrible, it has no meaning.
We're talking about the extreme of it.
The extreme, right? Again, if you make it take more pragmatic and more balanced view of sandboxes, I think, like railroads, if you use them as a tool in an overall campaign, it can be really useful, right? To sort of expand the scope of the world. Right. Whereas some players or some parties might be like, yes, no, main storyline, and they're just straight like an arrow, right? But you might want to add more flavor, like, downtime. Downtime's kind of like a sandbox. What are you gonna do in your downtime?
It does turn up the dial on sandboxing, right? Like, I'm gonna limit the scope of the sandbox to time and location, right? So I'm going to give you a week. I'm going to give you a month. I'm going to give you 6 months, right? And then with that time, if you say, hey, you guys get 2 weeks of downtime.
Yep.
As the DM, you know that they can't fly across the world. Maybe they can fly across the world, but they can't necessarily get too far away from that kind of point that they're in.
Yeah.
So you've controlled the scope of their actions, but within that area, they can go and do whatever.
Yep.
Right? Somebody can go rob a bank. Somebody can go and have tea with the queen. Somebody can go... sewer diving to find that long lost treasure that washed down the drain.
Right.
It's all really good things that can happen with the PCs taking ownership of that part of the story.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think even outside of downtime, there's sort of these side quests. My main quest is the save the prime minister. He's been kidnapped by the big bad, right? But maybe I've got some time, because I don't know, the police are still going through the evidence that I sent them. They said it's gonna take a week. What I'm gonna do? I don't know. I heard rumors that there's some kobolds that have some ancient treasure. Maybe I can, right? That I'm interested in. Maybe I'll just go and see if I can ask them politely if I can borrow it.
You know,
or whatever, right? Like that's a side quest.
yes.
Right? So it can break up the intensity or the sort of the straightforwardness of a campaign too. And if you mix things up, it just, I don't know, make the side quests have just a little something that affects the main quest even better. Like maybe the police chief has always been antagonistic towards the party, but like, oh, you heard that his son's having a hard time getting in school. He needs a tutor. I'll tutor him. Blah blah blah. And then afterwards, he's much nicer to you. Right?
Yes. Which lets you get into the Hall of Records, which lets you find out the information that you could.
Right, or just just opens up another door, another possible path forward. Right, you don't need to.
Nope.
But you can. Right, and that can add to it a lot of fun to it, and sort of add to the feeling of player agency as opposed to be like, oh, I got to do the main quest line. Right.
Absolutely. Well, and kind of continuing with this idea, when you first said like the you've done the world building, right? And you've gone out there beforehand and you've put in all of this cool stuff, right? You've got the kobold tribes of the northern mountains. You've got the barbarians of the jungles. You've got the pirates of the swirling sea. You've got all of these things of the dry sea, right? Yes. You've got all of these things that you've gone in and you thought were cool, right? So you included it in, whether it was thematically cool or you just thought that kobold sand pirates were they were all kobolds, by the way. This is a world
Everyone's
of kobolds. Everyone's a kobold. If you thought that, I really love the idea of like, dark sun transportation, where there's like these sailing ships that are designed to sail on these oceans of sand, and you're like, I want a part of that in my world. Well, now in that sandbox idea,
you just dated yourself. Dark sun,
yeah, a little bit. Well, we've already talked about that. We played 2nd edition. So I'm proud. But going further with that is you've set up this world with a lot of these great, awesome things. Now is the time when you say, okay, you need to defeat the ancient dragon. Go find allies, because you can't do it by yourself, right? Yep. So I'm telling you right now, I'm railroading you to say, we're railroading into a sandbox because the goal that you want to accomplish cannot be accomplished as you are right now. So I'm going to force you now to go out into the world to explore as you want to explore, right? And go and see these individuals or go and see these side quest people and collect them as allies and then bring them back for a final battle. Yeah. It also then goes and you go, oh, well, we could use the poisons from the barbarians of the jungle. We could use like fast ships to get across the dry sea. We could use that. We could use this. And so all of these cool things then become really fun to share. Now you're actively being promoted to share them with the PCs, because the PCs go, that sounds cool. And you go, it is cool. And I can't wait to share it with you. Right. And I think the more kind of hooks and the more interest that you seed out into the world in a sandbox will drive the natural curiosity that we have as players to go and explore these things and truly go on an adventure. Right.
It can even come from your players, right? Like your wizard's like, how do I get myself a robe of the Archmagi? Magus? I don't know. Magi, yeah. Many Maguses. I mean, how do I get a robe? It's not in the tailor doesn't have one. The general store doesn't have one, right? And then the DM would be like, well, why don't you ask around? And then you hear a rumor, or you find it in this records of one in the library. You have to go there. Then you go, and the DM's like, there are no robes of Archmagi in the world. Like, I haven't put any in, but if you want one, I can say okay and send you off somewhere, right? And that's another sort of way to do sandbox activity.
Well, and it's funny that you put it that way, because it's exactly how the DMG suggests that you deal with it, or the Dungeon Master's Guide suggests that if PCs want to create magical items or generate magical items themselves, that you create the raw materials that they need as exotic materials that they then have to go on an adventure to collect.
Yeah.
And let's say you're looking at a legendary item.
Mm-hmm.
So that's tier 4 play. So I'm going to send you into 4 different places that are all mildly to very deadly or dangerous.
Right.
And you have to go and earn this item because it is worth collecting. And then it's not just, I went to the tailor, he told me I was a 42 long, and then I came out with a set of robes of the Archmagi. And it's awesome, right? That store's got tons of them. It really creates the fact that that's a unique thing.
Right.
And then as a player, you can take a lot of pride in the fact that you spent the time and the energy and the creative process, and with the DM, you created this thing.
Yeah, but that being said, I mean, side quests, all that stuff is cool, but you have to be careful because I feel like if you're not keeping track of it, the players and the characters themselves can get lost in all the other stuff that they could do. They're like, oh wait, what were we doing? What were we supposed to be doing? And it's like 6 months later, and you're like, what happened to the Prime Minister? Is he still okay? I don't know, but check out my new robes.
Oh, he got melted by the ancient dragon that came down when the army wasn't there to stop him.
Right?
Like,
Yeah. Or just forget about the main storyline altogether. I mean, maybe that's good. Maybe I guess if your players are having fun, but I don't know. Like it happened to me a couple of times. I think playing like the first couple of Elder Scrolls games, because you go and you can go anywhere, do anything.
Yes.
And I would just go, and I just forget what the main quest on. Like, oh, I need to find this talking mud crab, right? And like 5 days later, you're like,
those
what was I doing?
Rumored chatty mud crabs.
I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And then you get lost, right? And that's not a great feeling.
Yes.
So yeah, be careful to always, I think, bring at least the idea back that there is a main quest line, right? Well, that presumably the characters care about.
And if you're playing with those dials, right, between railroad, between sandbox and whatnot, right, set a time limit on it. Just like when you set the time limit for downtime, set the scope of this part of the adventure. Maybe this part of the adventure is your tier 2 or your tier 3 part of your leveling process.
Right.
So from levels 5 to 10, go out and have fun. But around level 10, you're going to start hearing those rumors that the dragon is rumbling in his cave, right? Like you got to get back to civilization. You got to get back to what you were doing because there are things happening that you should respond to. Right now, ultimately, because you're letting the PCs decide, they don't have to go back. But then the rumors are going to turn into actual like news being shared by town criers that villages are burned or destroyed and people are being slaughtered or whatever it is. And that ultimately their responsibility is being shirked from what they were supposed to be doing in the campaign. But ultimately, like we said, that's playing with those knobs of where we're sitting at as far as making the system go. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And like you can when you playing with the knobs, there's the intensity of the sandboxiness. And then like you talked about earlier, there's also the scope of your sandboxiness. Because technically, say a murder scene and a mystery can be set in a one manner. Right. And it's a sandbox already. Like like you have a goal, but how you go about accomplishing that goal is completely open, right? And the players can do anything, go anywhere, right? So that itself is a great way of having a sort of a limited scope sandbox to give the feeling of sort of I can do anything, that sandboxy feeling, but it still has meaning because it's contained within a narrative.
Yes, you can do anything but go to town for eggs. Right, like you got to stay.
You can, but it does nothing for
here. And then you understand that the murder investigation is here. I can only move forward on that when I'm present, and investigating or doing whatever it is, or maybe murdering. Ooh, someone at your table is a traitor.
It's only murder if it's on purpose, right?
Yeah, is it? I guess. Sure.
Right. Otherwise, it's just killing or manslaughter.
I guess with our legal system, yes. Shout out to those of you who develop your own legal systems, because that's
fun.
Yeah, it can be fun. It can also just be boring. But what is not boring is getting in the comments and letting us know how have you experienced fun versions of railroads. Like let's fight the stereotype. a fun version of a railroad where you got to kind of play with your DM and where they toned it down maybe a little bit and allowed you to kind of get in there and take a left turn somewhere when you weren't supposed to.
Or have you ever played a sandbox game that actually was, that was compelling in the long run? Because my experience, most sandbox games kind of break down after a while and people just sort of lose interest.
Without that goal driving you.
Yeah. But if I would be interested in hearing some examples of how it was done in such a way that it was compelling and meaningful, so the players kept going for an extended period of time.
Well, and to that effect, West March's style campaigns are becoming more and more popular now. So there has to be something to sandboxes.
So can you explain to me what a West March style campaign is?
West March style campaigns, in a nutshell, is essentially where you have it's a campaign in a nutshell. How lucky. The idea is that you've got a roster.
Pistachio nut open. Give me my campaign.
That's a nice tight little campaign you got there. So when you're looking at the West Marches campaign, no, we're not jokes. When you're looking at this campaign, essentially you can have a roster of people. So let's say you've got 15 players.
Yep.
And you just have an open table, right? We're gonna be playing Thursday nights. Show up if you can show up. Whatever. Every Thursday night, potentially a different group of people are showing up and they're doing something. And you can also say like, just like in the old books, and I don't know if you knew this, but in the old books, they said that your campaign world progresses in time with the real world. The only time that you can actually change it. Yeah, this is an old rule.
Hardcore.
So the only time that it changes is when you're actually sitting at the table and the DM has mastery of control, or when they say that it doesn't. So in between the week that you were playing, a week has moved on in game, unless otherwise stated, right? Or a month or whatever, right?
So we finished playing A Night Below, that campaign.
We never finished it.
After the second book we just started the third book.
No, we got to the end of the second book.
I want to know what happened to Heronshire.
Heronshire is fine because our PCs never went down far enough to like, they just like held the tide up maybe. Or I won't spoil. No spoilers in case you want to play. Night Below is amazing. But back to the West Marches, then what's happening is you're in a sandbox and the groups are going off and doing whatever the group wants to do that week. And so the DM is really responsible for making episodic structure where your beginning, your middle, and your end all happen within one session. And then next week, it's a week later where another group of adventurers goes out and does something. And there's a progression to the world. But ultimately, what you are doing isn't necessarily goal-based on an overarching campaign.
Interesting. It's kind of like Gloomhaven.
Kind of like Gloomhaven. Yeah.
Tabletop game for you guys who aren't familiar with that. Interesting. So it's like a series of one-shots, which when taken together have an effect on the campaign world.
Correct. Or like your favorite kind of, sci-fi or adventure story, right? Where, the Enterprise is going around and it's a different away team going on each mission. You still have everything going on, the Enterprise, the city, the whatever you want to call it, the base of operations, and you go forth as different groups of people to accomplish tasks. Maybe those tasks benefit your hometown. Maybe they don't, but they do benefit the adventurers that go out and do them. And, you can, in these types of things, if you don't show up very often, then your character doesn't go out very often. So yeah, maybe you are a level 2, 3 thief. And next to you is the level 10, 15, fighter. Right. And he's been there. He's been in the trenches the whole time. And I've seen a lot of stuff around here and you don't know nothing, kid. Right. And it's just like, oh, okay, great. So the players that show up, they've got the benefit of showing up. The players that can only show up so often have gotten the benefit of being able to play the game and knowing that they're not responsible or beholden to be there every week. Right. And anyway, not to go too deep on this, but essentially the idea is that you can come and play as much as you want and understand that you're ultimately trying to develop an area or you're trying to have an effect on the world that's going on around you. But there's no big bad that you have to deal with necessarily. You might uncover one, I suppose. Right. The other idea is another way of handling like downtime. Like you could say it's in between sessions. What's your character doing? Because a week is passing, right? What's your character doing for this week when they're not going out on this adventure? And then handling it that way as well. Keeping it an episodic structure, right? But ultimately, West Marches is a sandbox style game.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So for the busy adult on the go, try Westmarch.
I would be interested in trying that actually.
Yeah.
But no, I don't. I play like once every
Well, you gotta
2 months.
Yeah.
And then I'd be like, what happened, guys?
Yeah, what's been going on? Oh, not much.
Oh, hey, fighter, you level 15 now? I'm still level 1.
Yeah, I know. I know. But I got you a horse.
I heard your wife's been keeping you busy. Yeah.
And then we move on. Yes, and speaking of moving on, yes, let us know in the comments, all that stuff. Wow, we went on a tangent there.
Yeah, we
But
do that.
let us know in the comments. Yeah, great railroad experiences, great sandbox experiences. And if you played in a Westmarch and I got it totally wrong, as always, correct me because I love it. I love it. I love learning.
Yeah, just click on the like button and we'll know that you thought he was wrong.
Yeah, that's the going rate, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Anyway, this leads us to a rather new idea or a new concept,
Right.
that was recently coined.
Mhm.
And this is moving on to the idea of a waterslide campaign.
Right.
So it wasn't officially stated, but the idea was brought out in a conversation on the Exandria Unlimited DMs roundtable,
Right.
with Matt Mercer, Brennan Lee Mulligan, and Abri Iyengar. And Brennan was asked by Matt about conceptually how he does certain things.
Right.
And in this conversation, he came out with the idea, and he didn't call it this, but essentially he used the metaphor of a water slide.
Okay.
And kind of avoiding what he talked about, because please go watch it. It's great. It's super informative. It's great to see how other people do things and how they conceptually derive these ideas as DMs. It was great, especially bathroom time. I love bathroom time.
Bathroom time. Who doesn't love bathroom time?
Yeah, but the idea in this is the water slide is essentially a combination of both railroading and sandboxing. And it takes what we would consider the best parts of both and applies those together, and it kind of mitigates out the cons of both of them as well. And what it really does, where it really specializes, is it allows you to develop a modular approach to how you DM, how you prep, how you kind of create the game that you're going to be playing. And this method really allows you to give the players 100% agency on where they want to go. And then you create these pieces ahead of them to kind of drop in front of them that allows them to experience the themes and the story and what's going on in your world, but not beholdening them to always go the way that you tell them they have to.
Right.
I think in I'm not gonna say in a nutshell, but I think that's kind of a general idea of what it is.
Right.
Would you agree with that, or is there anything you'd like to add on?
I mean, I see it as like the idea that it's modular is I think correct. I would also say that it's procedural, where there is no set story, but the story is built piecemeal as the party or the players make choices. Right? Like you put X event in front of them, they make a choice from there, they go off a certain direction, and then you put another event there that makes sense coming from their choice, and then as they move, and you have a destination in mind, not necessarily a direction directed towards a certain place or certain characters or certain BBGs, but a certain narrative direction.
Well, now, as he put it, for the metaphor, right? You are creating the story, so you are creating the slide. That is being created in front of the players, who are the water. And essentially, the players are trying to get to the goal that they're trying to get to as fast as possible. They're trying to go in a straight line, and you putting these shapes or twists or bends in front of them causes them to, in their mind, still be on track for the fastest way to get to the end or to get to the goal. But you create more campaign by forcing them to kind of twist and turn as they choose to, in a way. It's a very kind of give and take system where the players are pushing forward. They are making decisions. And it's not to say like you go into a dungeon, you can turn left or right. But it doesn't matter if you turn left or right, because it's room number 2. on my list.
Right.
Right. Whereas it's like, hey, I've got a list here of hooks that I've put into stories that could happen in any village.
Mhm.
And so the next time they come into a village, you're like, oh, I think I want to pull one of these out of my bag and I want to put out some rumors. And so you don't necessarily have to go, Annabelle in Twin Cottages is the one who knows about the green frog that's eating too many people, right? You don't need an Annabelle.
How many is too many?
One is too many. You know, so you can have Annabelle could be anyone. Annabelle is no longer a specific person, right? Now it can free Annabelle. Now it can be anyone who has the rumor that then sets off this story.
Yeah.
Right. So as opposed to the railroad, right, where you say, no, this is room 1. If you turn right or left, you go to room number 2. I don't really care. Right. Don't care. This is no, I'm playing the role of the DM by having my own skills and abilities and bag of tricks that I've got ready to go.
Absolutely.
And I can throw them out.
I like your analogy with the dungeon room, right? You go the entrance, you can go left or right. And it's not that there's room 2, no matter if you go left or right. The DM then has a bag of like 50 rooms, right? And whatever room seems most appropriate and most compelling to put next, the DM will be like, yes, this room looks like this with a sprinkle of these monsters and maybe this one trap, because that'd be perfect, right? And then they finish that in a certain way, and then because before the player resolves or the players resolve that second room, you don't know what the next most appropriate room might be, because maybe they got totally trashed, and if I put another big room full of monsters, they're just gonna die. So maybe I'll just put here's a room with a toilet and a bed. Yeah, and that's it, right? Like, right, and you've got this bag of rooms that you can just put in as is needed and as appropriate. And if you expand that idea into a whole campaign, that's what I see as the Waterslides.
I mean, especially if they've used all of their resources and they come to an empty room, a suspiciously empty room, and just watch them run around like chickens with their heads cut off, trying to figure out what the hell's going on, and playing in the moment of being fearful. Oh, guys, we got to be really careful, right? Get out your 10-foot poles and start tapping everything to see if there's traps or see if there's monsters that are going to jump out at us. We got to be like on point here.
It's a room with a comfy couch. There's a washroom, stocked mini bar, a coffee table, and on the coffee table is a note saying, definitely no traps or monsters here. Just rest.
Just rest. It's okay.
Yeah. Guaranteed they will not rest.
No. It will cause them to run fleeing this dungeon, right?
Short rest room. Welcome, adventurers.
Help yourself to cookies. You know, so these things that you can play out also allow something that has been broadcasted before, but there's a term called shoot the monk. And essentially what this is, in a very truncated explanation, is players are building their PCs to do certain things. Generally, in all these optimized builds that you can find everywhere, it does one thing really well. And so the idea of shoot the monks automatically gain the ability to catch or deflect missiles that are shot at them, right? Well, if the PC is investing their choices in their character design to make that monk a defensive master, right? He can bat arrows out of the sky like nobody's business. Well, then shoot at him. Right?
Yeah, let him
do the thing that he wants to do. And so when you get to the point where the healer's running low, right? And the fighter's running low, the healer's running low on spells and the fighter's running low on hit points, and you can short rest, but they know that this is an active dungeon. So if they short rest, something's going to come get them, and they're not really ready to run away yet, right? And the monk says, like, no, we should keep going, right? Put some archers in there. Put it in there so that the healer and the tank can go, wow, monk, you're so awesome. You were deflecting all of those shots for us, and we didn't have to use up any more resources. You did such a great job. Having these resources in your bag to throw at the character's strengths, throw your weakness at their strengths sometimes to show off how cool they are, is a great way of, when we're talking about prepping the bag of tricks, is something that's awesome to do.
Yeah.
And kind of going a step further, as a DM, when you're prepping a game, now you're not wasting any prep. You have an idea, you think about it, you go, oh, maybe it doesn't work in this campaign, add it to the bag, right? oh, maybe it could work if only this or this happened. Well, as we know, PCs love going into left field, right?
Yeah.
There's always going to be a time where you don't know what's happening. And maybe that time where they do go somewhere, that somewhere perfectly matches with your idea. Add it to the bag.
Yep.
Right? And so we can just develop this wide skill set, right? Where we can always pick or pull an interesting shape or an interesting thing to throw in front of them that then creates a game that feels like a living world. It feels like it's natural and it's progressional. It's reacting to the PCs when you're the one who's doing that. And it's great and easy to use as a new DM, right? Because you can go forth and you can look at people make all these lists and all these Excel spreadsheets and whatnot. That's in a way them prepping their bag.
Yep.
Right. Or you can just kind of keep your bag nice and small, right? And just work with a little few things that you're experimenting with, right? And then you build on that and you build on that and build on that. And then sometimes you throw a left or a curveball at the PCs and see how it lands. Oh, maybe that one's not ready to go in the bag yet. That one needs a little bit more development. Okay, cool. But it's a great way for you to not waste any time.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I was just saying right before you said it's great for even new DMs. I was just thinking that this sounds actually the most difficult to pull off out of all three of them. But I guess like the other two, it depends on to what degree of this water slidiness you want to put into there. Because if you take it to its extremes, I think it actually the further you take the water slide, the better it is, I think. And your only limit is sort of your own competency and your own ability to pull it off. Because at the highest levels, I think you're not just pulling out like locations and people and monsters and traps or whatever, or physical context. You've got a bag of sort of narrative structures. Like you understand how stories are built. Like you know about like the introduction, inciting incidents, rising actions, climaxes, denouements, or all that kind of stuff, right?
Ooh, a little French for you.
Right. And we're Canadian. So you are sort of vividly aware of on which part of that narrative structure the party's at. Right? And not only that, you also have in your bag of tricks all these different narrative devices that you can just toss out when you feel like it's that it would make it be compelling or have good impact, right? Like plot twists or red herrings, right?
Definitely throwing out a purposeful dead end every now and then can be kind of good, can be fun, right? The PCs are not always successful in their goals, right? Sometimes they make the right decision for the wrong reason, or the wrong decision for the right reasons. And they can run into a dead end, right? Oh, the only way that we get to, the national treasure, right? That storyline. The only way that we can save people or we can find the treasure is by committing crime, is by doing something bad. Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, maybe throw that out in there. But nope, crime is bad and you all end up in jail. Great. Now we have a new scenario where the PCs have no gear. The spellcasters only have the spells that they have memorized. They can't change it, or the wizard can't change around in his book or whatever. He doesn't have that. So now we're going to have like a break out of prison or a prison break episode, right? It also, I think going back to this new DM thing, it also allows you to be a mirror for the media that you like to consume. So you read a book and you see, oh, that's a great idea how they created this political twist, right? Or you watch a show and you're like, oh, I really like how they hid that clue in this area, right? You can take those little bits, and when you don't necessarily have the like we're gonna call it the chops, right? But like the experience, if you are newer and you're trying to develop your repertoire, emulate things. Yeah. Right? Like, within reason, there is a limit to like how much you should plagiarize or whatnot.
Well, there's plagiarizing exactly what happened. Yes. There's no plagiarizing tropes. No. There's no plagiarizing there plot devices. Yeah. Right? They're general enough that you can use it however you want to. And really, it's just mixing and matching the different ingredients within that trope. Yes. Right? Like the magical girl trope. Like there's Sailor Moon's like maybe the first one, and there's like so many other ones in anime, right?
Yes.
They're all magical girls, and they all seem that trope. There's magical boys these days, magical animals, whatever, right? But all the elements are the
watch
same.
out for those magical animals. They're always bad.
Right? Eating one person is too many. Right, but there's always the guardian animal. The animal differs, the way the magical is difficult. But there's always those elements, right? So yeah, feel free to copy those.
Well, it's funny that you say Sailor Moon, and then we go, oh, well, then there was also Power Rangers, right?
Yeah.
So completely different media style, but ultimately, it's a group of teenagers that get superpowers.
Yeah, they have secret identities.
Right, instead of an animal, they've got Alpha. Oh, I can't
Alpha,
remember.
that's his name, right?
Was it?
Alpha, he's the little... And then Zordon's the big guy.
Zordon's the guy on the screen, yes. But no, that's a great way of building the possibilities and the things that are in there by watching and seeing how successful story writers and successful story emulators do it. Right? When you're watching something and you feel inspired by the story, enjoy it, pause, rewind, go back and go, why is this so compelling? What is it about this that's grabbing me? Even as an audience member, I can see it on the cast's face, or I can see it on the players' faces, or whatever it is. But why is this so compelling, and why am I so attracted to this play right now?
No.
And then from that, you can then go, okay, I know that I need to develop my understanding or my application of like emotional hooks or emotional drivers for stories. And then you start working on it.
Well, and the great thing about taking sort of tropes and sort of examples from media, once you place that in front of the players, because they also consume media, they recognize it, right? And they inherently know what their role is within that trope, right? And without having to push them in a certain way, they'll just do it, right?
Well, there's that underlying, like you said, understanding because they've consumed that media.
Yeah,
they know what the rules of the game are without you having to explain them.
Yep, and they'll willingly choose to go in that certain direction. Typically,
yes,
right. So it's not railroading; it's the players choosing of their own free will. But it's sort of a weird psychological trick, right? That you can play. It's not a trick that you play, but that you it's a psychological path that you put in front of your players, and then they can just fulfill that role, and it feels good to them because they recognize it, like this is great, and they know how to enjoy it too.
Yeah, right? and I love that you said it feels great because like as we're talking about this, right? It's like the Marie Kondo effect on D&D,
right? Yeah,
right. Like if it brings you joy, keep it, right? And if it doesn't, toss it, right? And so this idea that you're like, oh, I love this piece, I'm gonna throw this piece out, right? I'm gonna try this piece. Oh, we don't like this piece, I'm not gonna use this piece anymore. Or I need to bring it back to the drawing board and I need to develop more until I derive passion and enjoyment from it.
Holy cow, that is
right. And so using these weird tropes and these weird like feng shui, your bag of tricks,
right?
Why not use these things that we know act well in other parts of our lives, and then flow it right back into this hobby that we all love and enjoy so much?
Yeah.
Right? You probably love and enjoy it because you're here watching us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I really think that, like you said, the water slide can be difficult, I think, for lack of a better term, get in the flow of. Right? But ultimately, when you start listening to your PCs and being present, not worrying about them getting to the next room that has the 5 guys into the blah 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 blah. When you're like, oh, okay, we all know that we're going into a dungeon, so things are going to happen, but being able to kind of be a little bit more loosey-goosey with it and being more in that kind of flow state of just action reaction and leaning in, you're going to have a way better time doing it. And like I said, they're going to feel like the world is reacting to them. The PCs rather are going to feel like the world is reacting to them, which is one of the great things that's hard to accomplish, but to allow your PCs to A, feel like they're part of the world,
right,
and B, feel like they can put their mark on the world.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Right. It really speaks to players when they see the effect of change over time with what they're doing. And like you said, those relationships. Yeah, no, that sheriff hated us when we first started here.
Yeah.
But now we're tight.
right? Like any good movie, the main character needs to matter. Like if you take out the main character, is the movie gonna be the same? Then it wasn't a great movie.
It shouldn't be. Oh, see,
I don't think it's
you're gonna
great.
get yelled at by the Lost Ark people.
Right? I don't because you don't need that character, right? And if you don't need any of your party members, then I don't know. Then it doesn't feel great. Right? Then you feel as a player without agency. Right? I can do stuff, but nothing matters because it would have happened anyway. Yeah. So yeah, so that's the three, right?
That's
Railroad.
the three. Yep. Railroad,
Sandbox, Waterslide. Yeah, Waterslide is, I think, I don't know. It's the most complex, both conceptually.
Oh,
and practically.
You can go on the water puns. You can go on the deep end, really, if you look at the Waterslide, right? You obviously the person who coined it is ridiculously well read, right? And he deals with philosophy and like you said, kind of the meta information on how to create a story and what makes a story compelling. And it's truly as deep as you want to go, right? And philosophical as you want to go. And it allows you also to kind of just jump out sometimes and maybe just go like, nope, we need a little break here. Sandbox time. Right? Like, maybe I'm getting burned out as a DM being in this flow state or always being reactionary in a way because I'm not comfortable. My strengths as a DM is not improvisation and reaction. My strength as a DM is prep and control. Okay. Well,
and that's fine too.
Maybe dial down like 1 or 2 clicks, try it to experiment with your skills, develop the chops, as it were, right? Knock down railroading a step, knock down sandboxing a step, start clicking up on the Waterslide and see if you like it. I think you will. I've enjoyed my transition because I kind of already did do that. Even when it was a campaign book or a module or whatnot, I went outside the lines and I added my own stuff into it because
it was kind of stressful. Not gonna lie.
And that was the theme, is stress. But it felt more natural to me being there. And I think it felt better to the players, even if it was a little bit more stressful. There's also Old Testament DMing and New Testament DMing over here. But true. That's why we have session zeros. And then you can throw up that link there. But yes. Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I like the idea of Waterslides.
Yeah, so Waterslide's great. But if you guys let us know, have you ever tried the Waterslide? How'd it go for you? Any advice on how to actually pull it off? Because it does sound super intimidating. I've never attempted to do it myself. So like I was one of the prepper. I did the mixture when I DM'd. It was a mixture of the Railroad and Sandbox.
Yes, absolutely. But you went Sandbox Extreme. You the last campaign I think that you ran that I played in, you fully flushed out every single part of where we were.
Yes.
And it was localized to one building. It was a very large building, but one building. And you knew every office, every hallway, every corridor, every greeting area. The amount of detail was beautiful and it was great. And there was a whole theme that we didn't get to experience because we were being chased by zombies. And you don't have time to appreciate the art on the wall.
You just didn't run in that direction.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So,
but it was there for us to enjoy. We just didn't go there. And so, I would argue that that's not necessarily wasted prep. But if it never gets out to light, if you can't, lock that off and put it somewhere else, then maybe it was. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And if your time is precious, which everyone's time is, we want to learn how to use it better. And so this is a great way to do that.
Yeah, for sure. I think what else really will save us a lot of time is I'm going to flip it around.
Ooh.
If you don't subscribe and you don't like we don't care, right? We don't care. Go ahead and not do that.
That's a little reverse psychology.
Exactly.
Kids at home.
Exactly. A new trope I'm trying out here.
Wow. Okay.
Right? So you just don't downvote us. I can't.
No, don't rate show us. Yes, no, please subscribe if you can. Like I said, let us know in the comments if you've derived a different system that you think is better than railroading or Sandbox. If it was Waterslide, we got you. But if it was something else, if it's rocks fall, everyone lives, let us know, right? Like, let us know what your kind of idea or what your style of DMing incorporates and what kind of systems you use behind the themes to really drive your game to success.
Yeah, no, we're really interested in knowing. This is a topic that I'm actually really super interested in. I find it endlessly fascinating. So, yeah, let us know.
We might have to do a throwback as well. Come back and revisit this topic if you guys like it and want us to go deeper into some of these ideas.
Yeah, especially. I mean, especially because talking about how exactly you can pull off that water slide well, I think you can go real deep into that subject. So, all right, well, I think that's it. Yeah.
That's the sound.
Oh,
you got it.
It is it.
Right. I got it.
Well, once again, thank you for joining us. We are, what are we?
Well, we're Caffeine and Cantrips.
Yes.
But I'm Byron.
And I'm Sean.
And we hope you join us next time.
Or else.
Nice. Yeah. Cool. I was looking at this. I was like, oh, we're getting close. We're getting close. We have to turn it off.
Yeah.